Hi, everyone. It's Laurie White, President of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to episode number 71 of Chamber TV. And today we are thrilled to have with us the Commissioner of Education, Angélica Infante-Green, and she is here with us today to talk about the reopening of school in the fall. Welcome, Commissioner. It's wonderful to see you. It's wonderful to have you as our guest today.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm privileged to be here.
Thank you. So we start off all of our broadcasts by asking our guests, how are you and how's your family?
My family's good. And, day by day, like everyone else. But these are tough times. So I'm a little exhausted, but, working hard every day.
Well, since you've been with us as commissioner, it's been a series of issues, one after the other, takeover of Providence schools and now obviously responding to the pandemic. And I know that you are extremely hardworking and we appreciate the time and energy that you give to the business community as well. And all of the times that you visit with us in person to share with our business leaders. So having said that, let's start from the beginning. And the governor has an announcement that she's planning to make on Monday. So can you tell us a little bit about the nature of what she is going to be announcing to the parents and students of our state?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of follow-up on what already has been announced. We're working very closely with the Department of Health. All our organizations are working closely. But as you probably heard, we're going to be visiting school buildings, doing walkthroughs of school buildings. So there's a lot of that conversation that's going to take place. And I think the piece that is important for everyone to remember as we do that, we have that conversation, it is also that, as districts are working towards getting to that place where they can open in person, still preparing for distance learning at the same time. So right now, that's what we're talking about, the metrics, where we are, as you probably know and heard. One of the metrics that we really thought was important that we've reached and continue to try to make even shorter is the testing. And the governor has made it very clear that we had to get testing down to 48 to 72 hours, and we're now down to 2 days and a half. So we're going to be reporting more on that and all the other scenarios that may come up from here to there.
When will the governor be announcing in a definitive way what the plans are for September 14th?
August 31st. So that is Monday, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So that was the question. So it is Monday. I'm sorry. I don't even know what day of the week it is at this point. So Monday.
Totally understand.
Where we are on the metrics, right? So we've met the testing one, but then there's the municipality in terms of how many cases per municipality. There is where the schools are at this point in preparedness. So those are the things that we're going to be announcing. We've also announced that we'll continue to talk about meeting where we are in all those metrics. And then the last one will be kind of looking at the buildings and having these walkthroughs to give more information about, is it ready? Is it ready for us to begin?
Mm-hmm. Is it possible that the decision making will remain fluid between August 31st and September 14th?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt about that.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about, you alluded to the 5 metrics that we all consider very important when looking at the decision to be in school or hybrid or completely remote. What can you tell us a little bit about each of those 5 metrics?
Sure. So I talked about the municipality. I think that one is really important because you've heard right now the only 3 districts that cannot return fully in person would be Providence, Central Falls, and Pawtucket. And that's due to the number of cases in those communities. We've seen the numbers go down in the last few weeks, but we're keeping an eye on that. So that's one. Metric number 2 is definitely the school preparedness. Three is whether the state is prepared, right? Are we prepared as a state in terms of having everything ready? And then I think, as we start looking, the school readiness one and then the PPE being the last one are really important. And the governor made sure that every school got PPE equipment for at least the first month, and there will continue to be more as is made available. But the districts have to also prepare. Do they have all those equipment ready? Are we good to go? So we are looking at everyone's plan, what the instructional plan looks like. All of those plans have been given feedback to. It's a fluid process going back and forth. So that's where we are right now.
So parents will have to stay on their toes between now and the middle of September to understand what the plans are for each of their students. Is that pretty much the size of it?
No. So the districts should have worked with the communities to develop their initial plans that they submitted. They have been required to talk to their individual communities. And one of the things that we have made very clear, and when I say we, I mean the governor and I, is that parents have a choice, right? Parents should have a choice. This is not a unilateral decision. There are parents who have called us and said, their kids didn't do well with distance learning, and there's some kids that did do well. We had success in March, but that was standing it up, right? We had a week to put it together. We actually surpassed other states, but that does not mean that it worked all the time, right? It means that we stood it up and we were able to give instruction to our kids. Doesn't mean that, it was challenging. Kids that have IEPs or students that are differently abled really were challenged with the distance learning. Kids that are multilingual learner, or kids that, this is just not the best way that they learn, struggled. And we've heard it from parents time and time again, and they want their kids back in person. And then there's the parents that don't want them in person. So we think that it's really important that all plans reflect that choice at this point. And parents should know what each individual district is doing at this juncture. When the governor announces on the 31st, whether we could all go in person or whether it'll be partial, that will determine which plan they put into place. But the district or the community should know what all the plans were ahead of time, because we've asked them to put them all together.
Mm-hmm. So your preference or your bias would be that, assuming all things being equal, that returning to the classroom is really important for the educational achievement of the students, that it is actually much more effective.
Well, I think, being a mother myself, you have to think about your children individually, right? Many of you know my 13-year-old is autistic. He actually was okay, right? But what he struggles with is the social part, which it's very difficult to do. But we know children learn best in schools. And I hear all the time, well, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. Nothing is the same right now, right? Nothing is the same. But kids crave to be with other kids, the social emotional aspect. And I think we forget that for a lot of kids, this is where they get a meal. I think it's also, there's a lot of things that we're forgetting, but we are worried about the social emotional growth of our students as well as the academic.
What about the technology aspects? Is there anything in this upcoming school year that will be different from a Chromebook perspective, access to the internet perspective, some of those challenges that were difficult for certain students in certain communities?
Yes, I want to thank, we got a lot of philanthropy dollars from different businesses that are local. We are very grateful. CVS, Cox really made the Wi-Fi available for us. Fidelity really stepped up. So we're excited about that. However, as technology goes, we've got technology in the hands of kids, but technology needs to be updated. Some of the technology was older. We still need to have more access, but Wi-Fi is going to be really important as we move forward. As you know, or maybe you don't, many of the companies, upon the governor's request, gave us free Wi-Fi, but that was up until the beginning of the school year. So we're working to try to secure, make sure that we do have Wi-Fi, because what we do know is that there will be virtual learning all throughout the year. What that means is if a child is sick, has the sniffles, you would normally send your child to school. Now you can't, right? So anything that your child may be exhibiting, they will have to stay home and do distance learning. So we do have to have the technology ready. It's not a one and done. So we do need support, and we would love to continue to get that from the community.
Well, as you know, our audience is business professionals, no doubt, with children in the schools. And we have all summer long been doing a series of business confidence, business pulse surveys to our members. And very interestingly, it seems that that on top of, in addition to, or the factor coming in next after the health and safety of coworkers, when we asked in a continuum, what keeps you awake at night? What are you most worried about? Of all the business issues, that you can think of, the number 2 issue was kids in the schools and how they were going to return to the schools and how they were going to deal with their own children and help to figure this out. So our membership, no doubt moms and dads that have kids in schools, this is an issue that's certainly keeping them awake at night, as I know it is keeping you awake at night. What are some of the issues on your wish list, some of the needs that you have from the commissioner's perspective in terms of technology or anything else that our business membership might be able to help you out with?
Right. So the first, what we want is to get kids back into school as long as it's safe, right? As safe as it can be. So we do have to have PPE equipment. We do have to have other equipment. In many cases, we are going to need filters, with HEPA filters, right? We are going to need that in some classrooms. That is something that we would really appreciate the effort and the support. More PPE technology. I think that that's important. And also, at the end of the day, making your concerns public are really important, because if it's the second thing that's keeping you up, it's obviously the first thing that keeps me up, but we need to have that dialogue. Many of the plans that we saw, this was a reality. We want schools to go back and be safe. And then some schools put in plans where kids would go an A day or a B day. And then, parents of younger kids said, well, who do I leave my kids with? Like it's a very challenging place we're in, but your voice is very important part of the equation. So I welcome that conversation so that we can talk about the needs that we have as an overall community and as parents. But we're trying to put in all the safety measures. But at the end of the day, the parents will make the decision.
We have 37 school districts in the state, and you had the pleasure and the privilege of reviewing each of those return to school scenarios. So were there wide differences in terms of the scope or the creativity of some of the plans over the continuum?
Yes.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So some of the plans were really creative, thought out of the box. Some were more traditional. I mean, this is hard, right? This is difficult for us, but I would say Little Compton, definitely put a tent out. That was part of their work. ICS, which is also a charter, also put out that they would close off the streets, have more outdoor space. Some of the other things that we saw was teachers being creative with their PPE, really looking at what the cafeteria would look like, using that as an instructional space. I think there were many different plans that really looked at the instruction a little different and the layout and what it was going to look like. Some school districts have 3 and 4 different drop-off times, right? And start times, exit times, to make sure that kids are kept safe. So there's a number of things that have taken place throughout the districts, and they're really good plans, and the ones that needed a little more work, they needed to see what other people are doing, because everything is very community based, right? So I welcome everyone to go back to the #2 school at Rhode, where you can see all the plans, you can see all the documents, all the recommendations. We just put out a facilities guidance. We also put out guidance on transportation. That has been the toughest for us in Rhode Island, in the transportation. We only have 2 bus companies, and no place to get other buses from. So I think that it's taught us a big lesson in how we have to keep moving forward and expanding our opportunities here in Rhode Island.
Well, that's interesting around the busing, because, packing kids into a closed space like a school bus, you need to have the social distancing during the whole transportation mode too. So I think that's something people may not fully appreciate, the difficulty of trying to figure that out too.
Yeah, and when you only have, let's say, 100 buses, and you have to transport the same number of kids, but now half as many can fit on a bus, we have to do 2 and 3 runs, and school districts were already doing 2 and 3 runs. But we've asked parents if they can take their children in, that please do. We want to minimize the number of kids on the buses. Well, we have to minimize. We're following the CDC guideline. It would just alleviate if it's possible to do that.
Could you characterize the discussions that you've had with the teachers and the teachers' unions about how they would like to proceed going forward?
Well, so we have a meeting actually every Wednesday that includes both teachers' unions, that includes superintendents, charters, everyone in there, the leadership, and we talk about that. How do we get kids back safely, right? This is the goal. How do we meet it? How do we put in all the measures? There's different people that feel different about it. I don't want to categorize them that they're all teachers, because I think that there are some teachers that do want to come back in person, and some teachers that are nervous and concerned and want to continue with distance learning. So there's a lot of factors here as we move forward.
How do you thread all those factors together and try to come up with a cohesive plan that respects the wide diversity of opinion?
Well, I think that we've been pretty clear that the numbers is what's going to drive our decision making, right? We are where we are, but we want to be very concrete. If the numbers indicate that we cannot open, then we won't. If the numbers are clear that we can, or some communities can and others can't, then that will happen as well. I think that we are trying to be as inclusive in the conversations as possible, listening to concerns, trying to address concerns. There's a lot that we've learned about this pandemic since we first went out in March. So we're using all that information and updating guidance. And at the end of the day, we know that one of the plans will be used that the district's already put together. And the question is which one, and they find out the 31st. And I think that's the part that we have to work with. And, we have to find a happy medium, and there will be some sort of happy medium as we move forward.
So you said we've learned a lot since the pandemic in March. Give us a couple of examples of some of the learnings that you've taken away from this that's guided your thinking and your planning.
Sure. So if you recall, in March, mask wearing was not a recommendation. It was only a recommendation for people in the health field. Now we know that is one of the most important things that we can do. We also learned about this, the 6, the 3 feet, how the virus works. We didn't know any of that when we went out. We have a lot more information now, and we know that wearing a mask it's a game changer. We know that. And the other part that we've learned is that early childhood has been open for 2 months. And they have been in pods. So they're different models. They're pods where kids stay together and don't interact with other children, other students. And we had that in the early childhood. And the kids did not wear masks. And it went really well, really well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you could do the mask, you could do the social distancing. You can't expect 3 and 4-year-olds to social distance. It's just not going to happen. So they really worked around that and made the community safe. Anything that they touch, they make sure that they washed their hands, they had hand sanitizer, all these kind of things, mitigating factors. So here's where we are. And then you can mitigate for safety. You can add another layer and another layer and another layer. And that's what we're trying to do, is to make sure that we have all the safety measures in place. But I think that that's a good conversation. We were cited as having a great plan nationally for our early childhood. And I think that that's something that we need to look at, because school may feel new right now, but this has been happening now for 2.5 months.
Yeah, so Rhode Island is really getting a number of accolades for the childhood return to school
Yep.
experience. So congratulations on that. Tell us a little bit more about the thinking that went into that and the achievement associated with it.
Well, I think part of that is Director Courtney Hawkins did a lot of work around that. And we worked with her, but it's really, she's the one that led that with the Department of Health. And our office did the summer school, which we had summer camps running this summer. That happened in person. And we also had summer school happening in person. And for the first time, if you're not aware, we had a statewide summer school experience. We've never done that in the past. And it was pretty well attended. Some were built by the kids. The students kept saying to us, I wish I would have known this when I was in middle school. So we got the high school students to teach the middle schoolers. We got college students to get high school students prepped and ready. They were academic courses. There were college credits that the kids took. And some of the opportunities were in person. So that's all happening. We feel very lucky. We hear what the national campaign is. We're in a different place in Rhode Island. We have been in a different place. We've been steady and moving forward in a way that is very structured and hopefully has built some confidence in the decisions that are being made. And we're trying to be as transparent as possible.
So I hear a lot of parents, worried about their kids falling behind academically. And particularly as the kids get older to the point where they begin to apply to colleges and universities, et cetera. What can you say to parents to reassure them that the learning that will be offered in 2021 is going to be sufficiently rigorous so that our kids actually don't lose ground?
So one of the things we're going to do, because we don't know how well distance learning worked, we are going to assess the students right now, early fall, when they come back. We're going to see where they are and correlate it to when they left to see if what's happened. And if we see that students are, have a bigger gap than expected, then we are going to actually double down and figure out how to give the supports to the students. And we have to meet the students where they are and ramp up. So that's a tall order, but we need the data to really know where we are. And that data, I just want to be clear, it's not for accountability. It's just for us to plan and meet the needs of the kids. And we've never done that as a state other than our state exam. This is the first time that we've done something like this. And I'm excited about it because it's going to give us data throughout the state and also see what's worked, what hasn't. But above all is to get the supports for the students that really need it so that we can be better at our planning and as we move forward with our system. Because as you know, teachers have been planning and working really hard, but this is the first time we've done this.
Yeah. I mentioned high school students going off to college and readiness for that, but I'm also thinking of the early, the younger kids who the literature says that if they're not reading at grade level by third grade, then, they're really handicapped for the rest of their school experience unless something extraordinary comes in to intervene. So you have, obviously it's a concern among all of the grades, but, those two in particular seem like they jump out to me as areas where there's a lot of energy around those points.
Yeah, totally agree. We heard throughout the distance learning from parents, especially kindergartners, first, second graders, they just really can't stay on technology all day, or that they struggled during this time period. It fell a lot on the parents, to be honest with you, in those grade levels. So it's really important for us to try to get them in safely into a school building so that they can continue to learn how kids learn best, which is through interacting in a very safe manner. So yes, we're concerned about all the grades. We're concerned about how do we move forward, what's going to happen. So we want to put the strongest instructional plan, and every district should have their instructional plan updated so that you're able to see, everyone should be able to see what's expected as we move forward.
So do you anticipate that the U.S. will benchmark against other nations? That this is a global pandemic, so theoretically there will be a hiccup ricocheting throughout the system, but we always think about those countries that are always very well prepared in terms of bringing their kids to a position of achievement. So how do you view that?
I think we're all going to be in the same place, right? So we will be benchmarking with everyone else. I think what's also going to be important to look at is who was able to bring back their kids in person, and how does that measure compared to districts. And I'm only talking about nationwide. There's some districts that have already said they're going to go distance learning. What's the difference for the districts that are going to be in person, or places like Norway or other countries that have had different ways of supporting the students and the families? I think that's going to be important as we look at those metrics. I worry because, as you know, when I first arrived here, we were already behind the eight ball, right? We were already in a tough place, and we don't know. Like I said, I can't say positive or negative, but what I can say is that we know that kids learn best in a school environment. So there is concern. There is concern. I think we've done the best that we can. We've also contracted as a state for online instruction from communities or companies that have been doing this for a long time and that have had success. And that's important for us too, because we want to have the option for parents and districts where they may only have 2 or 3 families that want to do distance learning. What happens then? So, and our medically fragile students, so that there's an option, and preferably with people that have done this that have a history of success doing this kind of work.
Yeah. So that's really interesting, because the notion of the curriculum was something that was very much front and center pre-pandemic. So now you have all of these newer wrinkles and complications around not only curriculum, but curriculum that is accessible from a remote perspective as well. So that really complicates things even more in terms of subject matter delivery.
Well, I have to tell you, everything is complicated. But I think that if the districts stick to the standards, the state standards is what really should be guiding all our curriculum. Some curriculum is already online digitally, some is not. So I think it's going to be a challenge to try to figure all that out. But I think the state standard is the bar. Standards is the bar, and then everything else we just have to fold in. But we have to try to match it, because those are our standards. That's what the kids have to meet. So
are you confident it's doable?
Which part?
Reaching the standards.
Well, we're always working towards reaching the standards. That's the expectation under whatever circumstance we're working under. So yes. I really hope that we do.
Yeah. So can you, Commissioner, conceive of a scenario where this pandemic actually is going to accelerate student learning in the long term, that, generation from now will look back and say, oh, that all happened, during COVID-19, or what are you looking at in the literature that would give people reason to believe that there is potentially a silver lining in all this?
Well, the silver lining that I see is that we have different methods of teaching kids now, right? We know for some kids, it might have worked well, and some kids that had trouble in school, or some kids that had to work, that needed the flexibility. So it's taught us that there are different ways of figuring this out. Do I know what it'll look like? I don't know, right? The literature is all being developed as we speak. The same way playbooks are being developed right now. We're writing the playbook ourselves. One of the things that I have to say is that we did get a lot of attention when we were able to pull off distance learning. And what that means is operationalize it, because other states were not able to do that. But what that meant to me, and that's when I realized how special Rhode Island is that we had some districts that were at 50, 60% connectivity and technology. And we had people band together in a way that, there were some districts that said, well, it's not equitable, not everybody has it, so we're not going to do it for anyone. And what we said in Rhode Island was, not everybody has it, how do we make it happen? And that's exactly what we did. We had business community, we had individual people. There was someone who went and bought 15 Chromebooks and delivered it. So, that's what makes Rhode Island special, is that we have the ability to band together and make things happen for our community. So do I think we're going to meet the standards? I hope we are. We're going to work really hard. Lesson planning is going to be really important as we move forward. It's what we do, right? We're resilient.
Yeah. So from a budgetary perspective, General Assembly perspective, funding for next year, too early to tell what your needs might be or what the feds will potentially deliver?
So it is too early to tell. We do need more money, right? The PPE equipment is going to cost money. I think the way we've pivoted and what we're going to need in the classroom is going to cost more money. I think that it's also just the instructional materials are different. So that is something that will cost more money. So we are, and it's going to cost more money. If we have smaller classrooms, we're going to need more teachers. So there's a lot of concern. I've had the opportunity to talk to the federal delegation, which has been amazing and continuously advocates for us. And they feel that more money will be coming, but right now it's too soon to know. And we're just waiting on that front.
So I can't let you go before I ask you to just comment briefly on what's happening in the city of Providence with your intervention and your perspective on what to look for in the next 6 to 12 months relative to Providence and the students there.
Sure. So what's exciting about Providence since I last came to the chamber, we put out our TAP plan. We put out all the work that
your turnaround plan.
Sorry. Our turnaround plan. Sorry, we have many acronyms in education.
Okay, it's all right. I can translate as we go along.
Thank you for doing that, Laurie. So we put the plan together with the community, which was what we kept hearing, that things are always done to the community and not with the community. So we're very excited about that. And we set some pretty high metrics and bar for us to meet. And we're poised to be there. So there's a couple of things that are really important as we do the work. The company that we contracted for literacy, American Reading Company, has put their material online and digital. So when you talked about curriculum, that's something that we pushed them really hard to do for us. I think that there is a sense of renewed hope and expectation. You've probably heard by now, we have St. Joseph's building, which was donated by Joe Paolino, which is exciting, which will be our K-8, pre-K-8 school. So there's a lot of things in motion. But there's a lot of work to do, a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, a lot of change that needs to happen. And that's not going to be easy. And we're already feeling the tension and the pressure of that change. The superintendent put out a letter last week that has ruffled a lot of feathers because there's an expectation that there need to be lesson plans available. That is something that we're expecting in the district. So that's, there's a need for a great deal of change to still happen. And we're pushing ahead. We're pushing ahead. We're committed to making that actually come to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that that is so important for future generations of industry, and relying on the population in the urban core to be able to recruit talent and to make Rhode Island a very competitive place in which to do business. And
Yeah, I'm sorry, Laurie, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to add one of the things that we are doing at PPSD, which we wanted to do for all of the 12th graders, but we weren't able to, was have them do their senior year in college, right? To get that college experience, do both in 1 year. And what was heartbreaking, I have to say, is that about 400 and something students qualified to really go into the community college. So there's often reminders of why we need to continue to push the status quo, because it was really heartbreaking. And most of those kids were in classical. And when I say the community college standard, it's really, 430 in math, which is a 9th grade math, and our kids couldn't meet that. So I think that we have a lot of work to go. But we really want to think out of the box, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to think, how do we get kids to see themselves as going to college or being part of the industry, and really help Rhode Island continue to move in the business community?
yeah, so there are so many people and organizations and entities that are so laser focused on this. So I think it's safe to say that there are so many people that want to have your back and have the backs of the students to make this a reality. And we thank you for bringing all these issues to the forefront so that people have a better understanding of what the implications are long term for our economy. So let me just ask you one last question before I let you go back. And what would you tell our parents that are watching, that are chamber members and are concerned about the schools and either have kids in the schools or are in a position or want to be in a position where they can help out? What message do you have? What words of advice do you have for parents on how they need to think about these things in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, as we begin to another school year and a lot of certain uncertainty still popping around? So give us your words of reassurance.
Sure. I just want to reassure everyone that we would not do anything that doesn't put health and safety first. But you as a parent, you know your child, right? You know your situation. You need to do what's right, based on your concerns, your child's development. You know what that is. We are going to do our best to be transparent, to make sure that you have all the information that you need, that you feel comfortable sending your child back, if that is what you choose to do. So that's what we want to do. If I couldn't send my child back to school, then I don't expect anyone to do that. If I am sending my child back, and I think about my household. My husband, just so that everybody knows, my husband's an oral surgeon, and he has been working the entire time. And when he first used to come home, it was very stressful, very stressful. Because talk about being in ground zero, being in someone's mouth, right? Where all the droplets are all at once. But we instituted rigorous protocols in my house. He takes off his clothes at the door. He takes a shower. We get ready. And what's important is for families to think about what the protocols are going to be in their house. What are the measures that we're taking? Have we answered all your questions? please press us. We're here to serve you and to work with you. Your voice is really important for us. But I think that it's important that everyone understand that it's a very individual decision.
And we'll know more about the official pronouncements on August 31st, which is Monday. So
Monday.
how can people tune into that, and what should they be looking for? And can you give us a hint on what you expect might happen?
So I think we are meeting almost all the measures. So we're probably going to hear that we will be able to go back in person, whatever that looks like. I think that the 3 districts that we have been talking about for some time now are the ones that we will probably see fluctuations in, if at all. So we're in a good place right now. That's all I can say. But you'll hear from the governor on Monday at the press conference, and we will have a press conference every day next week to address issues, concerns. Today we had an open forum for educators on buildings, right, and how to mitigate with someone that does this for a living and who works with Boston, in Massachusetts, in right now it's in San Francisco, really looking at what does air quality look like? What are the things that are put in place? So we have all those plans that have come out, guidance. So just ask us the questions. It's
Yeah. In the whole National Guard support in terms of we didn't talk about that. Just spend a couple of minutes on that.
I should have brought that up because we're working with the National Guard. It's an education operation center that we are creating here at Rhode, which involves the Department of Health, the National Guard, our office, other agencies, RIPTA, everyone, all together really thinking about how we're going to make this happen. So there's a lot of state effort on really thinking about what needs to happen on the ground to be successful with our reopening.
Right. So the note of reassurance is if there were to be an incident in the school or an outbreak, that there is a well-defined, well-orchestrated, well-populated plan that does involve the National Guard and actually coming in and implementing a series of actions that would, in essence, lock down the school, I imagine, or provide quick access to testing and the like. So there's another layer of certainty that parents can look to, like, okay, there's a lot of support for the schools and for our students.
Yeah, and I want to just clarify that a little bit because the testing is going to be really important. We're going to have, in many cases, mobile sites, especially in the high density areas, but there are going to be locations where you can get tested. If something were to happen, there are mitigations in terms of quarantine spaces, testing, tests available. So there's a lot of effort and a lot of reassurance, and parents and students will have the option and the availability to those tests at any point.
So parents as well.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner, for spending some time with us today. We are so enamored with the work that you're doing and so impressed with the team that you've put together and the relationship that you built with all of the community partners and, of course, with us at the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. So we will be following you very closely. We invite you to come back anytime that you'd like to talk with chamber members, business professionals, solicit other support from our members. And we wish you well in the days and months ahead as you begin this very, very, very difficult job of not only reviving our schools from an achievement point of view, but also making it possible for kids to return safely and to learn in person. So thank you again for everything that you are doing. We really, really thank you for being with us today. So
thank you so much, Laurie, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce. Immense gratitude.
Take care.
Bye-bye.